seems to be an awful lot of sad stories in the news today, and there are thousands missing. Does anybody care? We built a channel where we talk about those faces. Talking news. Debbie. Cassie Barnes has still not been found, and it's been 2 years since her case first hit the spotlight. Breaking. Charles Vallow and Lara both behind bars. Sarah Galloway was found. She was found alive. What happened to Sarah Galloway?
It's too heartbreaking to share.
Children are still missing. Children like Dorsey. You're in shame. You just got away with it. Welcome to Talking News. Hello everyone. My name is Debbie. We use big stories to push little faces.
Hello guys, welcome to Chasing a Murder Talking News, and I want to ask you guys to please subscribe. Hit the like button right now so you don't forget. That'll help us out. Hit the notification bell if you'd like notifications whenever we have new uploads. So we're continuing Life Beyond the Grave, which is attached to the Lara Vallow case. This is part 9 of that series, so if you haven't checked out part 1, 2, 3, all the way up until 8, make sure you go back, start with part 1, and work your way back here. So we kind of left off learning about a new person in the case, if you're new to the Lara Vallow case, and that is Julie Rowe. We learned that Julie Rowe has a near-death experience in 2004. We also learned in 2004 that Lori Cox married Joseph Ryan. She became Lori Ryan. And they had this beautiful little girl named Tylee. We also learned that she brings her older child, Colby, into this marriage. Also around this time, Chad Daybell, who is married to Tammy, author, gravedigger, the couple are working on building a book company together. So while Chad and Tammy are building their family and moving forward with their lives, Charles has divorced his first wife, and Lori Ryan is now working on her divorce, which isn't going to go so smoothly. What I'm reading is that on August 13th of 2004, Lori's third husband, Joseph Ryan, files for divorce. But we hear it's Lori that actually files for the divorce, but I don't know which is which. Because we hear from Colby the reason for the divorce was the alleged abuse to the children. So again, it's August 13th, 2004. This divorce filing was actually filed in Hays County, Texas. And on documents that I found, it appears that Joseph Ryan is going to fight for full custody of Tylee. According to multiple interviews with Joseph Ryan's sister, Annie Cushing, she says after their divorce or during their separation, she and Lori maintain a close bond, sending each other pictures of their children. She says they don't talk often, but Lori feels like a sister to her, which is kind of strange because we know Annie was asked by Lori to testify against her own brother. And she does. That must have been difficult. Around September 28th of 2004, Julie is starting to use this near-death experience as a way to brighten her future, and I'll tell you how. So the day Julie claims that she left her body, she was visiting a different realm, which was the spirit realm, or behind the veil. There, she gets messages from a diversity of people, including the forefathers of this country. According to Julie, she said her near-death experience lasted 2.5 days. So when she decides she's going to start writing her books, she says she wants to kind of reach out to the non-denominational to appeal to a broader audience. So one of the things that the founding fathers tell Julie is they express their worries about the country's, eroding moral fabric, and she promised to share their counsel and warnings when she returned to Earth. She was forewarned that there will be earthquakes, famines, plagues, and wars. They're all coming to the United States. But Julie saw how God was preparing places for safety to protect the righteous people from coming calamities. According to Julie, when she starts making money, and I want to mention this in case I forget, from selling her books, the proceeds actually from that first book go towards the Greater Tomorrow Relief Fund. We know that Chad Daybell is also preparing to write books because voices encouraged him to do so. At first, Chad will say that most of these books are fictional. But later on, as we look deeper into his life, we find out that he actually will claim the opposite, that it would be nonfiction. And then he says that he is a true visionary. He hints that he is a prophet of the future. So where is Chad getting all the information of what's to come in the future? Well, he says he has a gift. Chad says in a book, his gifts are he can see in the future, he can talk to spirits, and he can download stuff like a computer and just hold it in his brain. He says these visions are actual scenes, and any scenes that are given to him from the other side, they are true events about to take its course. At this point in his life, he doesn't have a big following, but in the future, he will gain a few followers. In 2005, there is a divorce decree. Also, in this document, I noticed the word children. Not certain if that refers to Colby or not. Many of us are wondering if Colby is part of this custody battle at any point. We know that Colby has Joseph Ryan's last name, but we never find any adoption papers or any proof that he was ever actually adopted. During this time, both parents are in Travis County, and in I think it's 155.001 Texas Code, they state that both parents are allowed frequent contact with the children as long as the parents act in the best interest of the children. But Lori is given the right to be the primary residence holder of those children. And soon things will start to heat up and get more interesting because we'll see more documents come out showing how Joe had to fight to just have just the smallest amount of visitation with his daughter Tylee. January 5th of 2005, there are more documents, but these documents are about the financial crisis these two are going through. There are documents stating that they're in financial trouble. According to court documents, during this divorce in 2005, they filed bankruptcy. And Lori Ryan actually reported more than $723,000 in liabilities. Not only that, Lori and Joseph both were on the hook for $79,000, well, let's say close to $80,000 that they owed to the IRS. According to the filing, Lori is earning around $3,700 per month, self-employed, listed as a hairstylist in Texas. She also receives around $1,500 in support payments they claim from her ex-husband, which I don't know if this is Joseph Ryan or Colby. Her total monthly expenses was around $6,200 is what she's claiming. So all this in addition to the money that she owed on her house that she lived in. Lori also reported more than $28,000 of debt that she has charged on credit cards. And I missed this, I apologize. It says that that also includes loans and other bills, and that is another about $11,000 and $5,150 on a Target credit card. That is just a lot of debt. They're living in this huge house. I guess they're just living beyond their means. That's the only thing I can think of. That is a lot of debt. I can't remember if I mentioned this or not, but I want to address it just to be sure. So January of 2005, Chad Daybell's wife, Tammy Daybell, her grandmother passes away. It's important to remember Tammy's grandmother. So this is because Chad will later claim that he receives visits and messages from behind the veil from Tammy's grandmother. And we'll go into more detail soon. It is certain that Lori Ryan and Joe Ryan, they're finished. And they're having a little disputes over getting custody over Tylee. And in a post on Facebook, and it was posted 2010, he takes Tylee to Disney World around 2004 to 2007. I just went ahead and stuck it here in 2005. And it's nearly impossible to get every bit of information because there's so many people involved. So sometime around February 13th of 2005, I narrowed it down to, according to Lori's brother Adam Cox, he gives an interview explaining how Charles meets Lori, but we get kind of some contradicting information on how that went. So Charles is divorced, Lori is getting divorced, and Charles goes in for a hair trim at one of the salons, and guess who's there? Well, no other than Lori Ryan. How interesting, right? Lori Ryan and Charles seem to hit it off almost immediately, and as he gets his hair trimmed, it seems that the two set up another meeting. Now remember, Lori is still in Texas and Charles is living in Texas. And the other story of how Lori meets Charles is we hear that he is actually introduced to her through a friend. So I don't know which one is the truth. So if Adam Cox is sure on this, then obviously Lori wasn't working from her home. She was working at a salon. So Lori and Charles are dating, and during this time there's documents that are being turned into the court that has to do with the custody battle over Tylee Ryan. Joe tells everybody that Lori is a crazy, lying Mormon, and here's her exact quotes in the documents. He told everybody that I was a lying, crazy Mormon and got up in court and said all these horrible things about me and turned it around to where the judges believe him instead of me, end quote. Does that sound familiar? Remember this quote, guys, in the way that it sounds. So if you follow this case, Charles isn't the first person to call her a crazy Mormon. In fact, he might be the third man to call her that. As we move deeper into March of 2005, we're learning a little bit about Charles and Lori, and it seems that the two fall in love quite quickly. So what do we learn so far? So Charles Vallow, from his previous marriage, has been, accused of being bipolar and getting angry easily. And at the time of his first marriage, his ex-wife accuses him of wanting to drink alcohol often. He mentions his medication for the bipolar disorder and how it didn't work as long as he was drinking. So he said that he had to give up drinking. That's very interesting, really. If you think about, Lori is not a supporter of drinking and that sort of thing. So at that time, Charles Vallow is a devout Catholic. He has a few children, and now he's dating Lori Ryan, who is recently divorced, who also have two children, which is Tylee and Colby. And if Charles wanted to be with Lori, the one thing I do know for certain is he would have to give up any type of drugs and alcohol, because that's something that Lori supposedly is against. What's also interesting to me is Janice Cox, which is Lori's mother, does a few interviews with media sources. She describes that Lori's history with men was a kind of a nightmare until Charles. She said that Charles was one of her favorite ones. Basically, she said Charles is the best man that Lori ever dated. Charles would do anything that Lori asked. In fact, it seems that most of Lori's family did love Charles. One thing that Charles thought was odd is when he would attend family gatherings like parties or just dinners, he noticed that these gatherings, the family doesn't drink or do drugs. Again, this is due to their Mormon religion. He just thought it was kind of strange that there were people that were able to have parties and that sort of thing and not have to pick up a glass or a bottle of alcohol. Charles falls immediately head over heels for Lori, so much so that he converts from Catholic to Mormon. It's important that you notice that one thing, especially with Lori, if you're going to be in her life, you have to do things her way, especially in her faith and religion. You can't further a relationship unless you commit to be a Mormon. This is something that will pop up a few more times, so remember that. This is where it starts to get a little more interesting. So around May 18th of 2005, the final decreed divorce between Joe and Lori Ryan. That time is here, and Lori is now officially a free single woman. So the documents are coming out of Hays County, Texas. So the divorce went rather quickly, but what won't go so quickly is the custody battle for their daughter Tylee Ryan. And we will learn that there will be some very serious red flags popping up from both sides. It isn't long from now, and Lori Ryan at this time will claim that her ex-husband or ex-estranged husband, Joseph Ryan, is committing some very serious acts against the children, and she claims that he might have touched them inappropriately. On the other hand, Joseph Ryan is claiming that Charles Vallow is displaying mental illness concerns after threatening to take her own life if Joseph gained custody of their daughter Tylee. So Lori Ryan's marriage just crumbled away, and there are the darkest accusations involved in this dramatic separation. What's weird is if you were to look at Lori, her outside face appears to portray perfection and happiness. This is something you're going to notice throughout this case as well. And what I have learned is that she likes to hide her truths and betray the world and show what they expect from her. Deceit is easy for her. And this is why she turns out to be seen as one of the most dangerous people in history, in my opinion. She is like a black widow, setting her web of lies and even past for the future. While at this point of Lori Vallow's life, there are suspicions she might be struggling with mentally. No one truly is understanding just how bad those struggles are at this time. There's no doubt in my mind that she has had issues her entire life. It just kept growing. She was waiting for that perfect recipe for disaster. And at this time, what I want to do is actually go over a few questions that I asked the subscribers on the channel. So here are the questions that I put up. We had A, do you think Joseph Ryan was a good father? Why? B, do you think Lori was an example mother? If so or not, why? C, do you believe Julie had a near-death experience? Why? So the popular questions were around Joseph Ryan and Lori Vallow. And I'll start with Anastasia. Hey, Anastasia. Love you, girl. So I was actually happy to see you respond to this. So she is referring to the question of whether Lori could have been seen as a good mother. She writes, no, I don't believe that Lori was a good mother. She always puts herself above the children. Usually she looks like a good mother, but nothing can persuade me that she was. In my opinion, her husband was the better father than she was a good mother. She puts always her children in front and her winning what she wanted. She used her children. And Anastasia has a lot to say. She says, Julie, I believe, is a good person. Maybe a little strange. Maybe her interests are a little different. But when she met Chad, she was enthusiastic and believed him. She admired him and maybe she loves him. So I want to pause right there. So a lot of people believe that there's a possibility that maybe Julie and Chad had an affair. She continues on, in her eyes, he was like a small god, but her character was completely different from Lori. I believe she loved him more than a co-worker or friend. And there we go. So a lot of people do believe there was more going on between those two. And Anastasia said that she remembers in one interview where Julie talks about Lori and she looks jealous a bit, but maybe it's only my imagination. How humble you are, Anastasia. Then Anastasia continues, I make speculation about Lori as a narcissist and that she couldn't be loved by anyone. And then Anastasia brings up another good point, which a lot of people have asked or been concerned about. Is Lori Vallow Daybell mentally ill? She says maybe she has another disorder, schizophrenia, because of the strange faith. Maybe she heard voices, but certainly she was not a religious woman that all people believed in a normal way. I think she's trying to say here that, you know, even though all her husbands and family, they love her, she believes that God is choosing her to do this great mission and that she is this prophet or something like that. Did a great job, girl, on your English. I got most of it, except for the end. So, that is, I wish I could speak another language. So, you know, bravo for you. I think, Anastasia, a lot of people are on board with what you wrote there. A lot of people do believe that Lori possibly wasn't this great mother, and maybe the father isn't as bad as she's making out to be. But the problem with that is when you factor in Colby. So a lot of people trust Colby, not saying that I don't or anything like that, but why people think this. Colby saying that Joseph Ryan was abusive in the relationship at some point kind of, you know, takes points away from Joseph Ryan. Have to agree, we are looking for proof she was a great parent. So when you see pictures of Lori with the children, they're mostly vacation pictures and not really a lot of pictures of her at home hanging out with the children. Great share, Anastasia. I appreciate you doing that. So who we have next is Indigo Blue. She says, I must be in the top 10 and I wanted to add my answer anyway in case it was useful anyway, which I'm going to go ahead and share it anyway, Indigo Blue. I'm starting to feel so much better. I wish I could share. I'll share with you guys one day what I'm going through. But let's go ahead and get to what you think. So I believe that Lori Vallow Daybell was never a good mother. I cannot accept she ever bonded with any of her children. If she had, she wouldn't have been able to change her behavior so drastically in order to agree to take take part in the brutal murders of 2 of her children. The custody battle with Joe Ryan brought lots of Lori's priorities and preoccupations to the forefront. Unfortunately, it wasn't the needs of her young children, but her need to be in complete control of the people in her life. Absolutely true. She wanted to hurt her ex-husband Joe Ryan at any cost. Lori wasn't going to tolerate sharing her daughter with Joe, and we all know how this ended up. The court documents of the time are littered with warnings and concerns due to Lori's parenting style and general behavior as it related to the children. Lori shows throughout this time period that she will not entertain the requests made of her if she could possibly avoid them. I believe that Lori is completely self-centered and irreversibly damaged from her early childhood to the present day. Nothing she might have gone through in her largely privileged life is in any way responsible for the monstrous behavior. She was prepared to sacrifice so many lives, including her innocent young children's, to further her revised life goals with her new husband. That shows who she really is, a monster. Thank you, Indigo Blue, for sharing. And I'm just going to go ahead and cover as many as I can. And I have seen, and a lot of people do believe, everything that you shared here is a possibility and reasoning for Lori's actions. But unlike what the media tries to do and make her look as if she was this great mother her entire life, most people don't see that. Thank you for sharing. If I can't pronounce the name, guys, forgive me. So, Marcini, she chose the question about Lori. And she said she had a persona of a good mother when people looked because it made her look good. I guess IMO means in my observation. In my observation, a narcissist. Her mask slipped whenever she got divorced. Plus, a good mother wouldn't teach her kids to claim they were abused. That is a good point. So it depends on, we don't know if the kids were abused or not, but we can only go by what's available to us, and a lot of documents suggest that Lori might have coerced her children into being or saying that they were abused. Now, a lot of people believe that Tylee was not abused, and the possibility that Colby was abused, but not as bad as it's made out to be. So we don't know. And so, yeah, that's where it makes it hard to kind of know what's really going on. But that is a great point. Thanks for sharing. I was surprised to see Deb Lyons respond. So anyway, she said she's responding to the Lori question. The world would never know about Joe, but I believe he tried. Lori had always used her kids to gain something of a benefit, but she had a good facade. Julie Rowe is a big kid stuck in Dungeons and Dragons game. So Deb covered 2 questions there. So yes, I think a lot of people agree that Lori is whatever people expect her to be. But behind closed doors, there is a dark person. I'm so sorry, guys, for the background noise. But anyways, when Deb covers Julie Rowe, how many people believe that Julie is kind of stuck in this fantasy realm? So I have heard so many different ideas about Julie, but they all kind of ride on the same line. That Julie is just having a good time with her fantasies. She's making money off the gullible and taking advantage of her faith. But Deb believes that this is all just fun and games for Julie, which as we get deeper into this, guys, I have written better as we get deeper into this, and I have more time to go into more details I think that you might not have ever heard before. So hang in there as we cover this basic information and move forward. It will get better. Thank you, Deb. Great share. The next one is our Venus gal. It's nice to see you here, honey. So she says, and she's referring to Lori, and the subject is Joe Ryan. She says, I think Joe would have been or might not have been a great father. So there's a video out there of Joe Ryan's attorney that is full of info of what Lori put Joe through. Despite every attempt and game Lori threw at him, Joe never quit fighting or paying to fight. And if I may pause for a minute, so she's talking about Joe never quits fighting for rights to his daughter, which we're going to cover those documents. So they're about to come up, I believe, the next video or the next one. So let's continue. She says, I feel the system failed Joe, and Lori knew every trick and avenue to use it, including moving Tylee away, and she got away with that, as well as and charmed what I think was the social worker sent from Texas to Arizona to talk to her about moving her without notice. She, referring to Lori, felt that she was a good mom. Joe even followed and moved to be closer to his daughter. He did bottom out some and started drinking during the long years of battles with Lori, and that's a shame. However, I think no man could have done more to try and be in their daughter's life, from what I have seen and from what I know anyhow. Interesting share, because this is something that I do cover in a story, and I don't really cover the fact that he was drinking because I wasn't able to, prove that. But it's true. I mean, what we can tell, Joe never gives up the fight, even through all the threats and stuff, which we'll cover shortly. So great share, honey. And of course, there's other people that believe that Colby has the bigger reality of what's really happening with Joe. And so Janelle09, hey Janelle, nice to see you, honey. Sorry I haven't been able to answer these comments like I usually do, but she responds to whether or not Joe Ryan might have been a good father, and she says no. The oldest son has no reason to lie. And so there are a lot of people on that same page with Janelle. But one thing that does bother me when it comes to this subject is, kids can be told things over and over when they're young. I've seen it happen to the point to where they believe it. So we'll never, ever really, truly know the truth of this. Thanks, Janelle, for sharing. Next is Justice Janny. And hey, Janny, it's nice to see you. But she didn't really respond to any of the questions. She says that Lori, the picture that I posted, that Lori looks like Vanna White. So, a lot of people have said that. No doubt that Lori could be attractive when she wanted to. Thanks, Jenny. So, Jane Doe, you're up next. She said, and she's commenting on Joe Ryan. She says, there's no way for us to know whether Joe Ryan was a good dad because we would be speculating. Absolutely. So that being said, from what we have seen of Colby behaves like an empathetic man, a good husband and dad. And I like that he's got a good head. Sorry, lost my spot there, guy. And I like that he has a good head on his shoulders. And I agree. I mean, we don't know Colby Ryan. We don't know who he really is, but he appears to be a good person, but as did his mother. So that's a great point. I mean, we want to believe in Colby, but it's just hard because, the nut doesn't fall far from the tree. And I don't mean that as calling him crazy. I'm just saying, and you've seen it if you have children, especially older children, they can gain things from their parents that we don't teach them. It's something that is given to them through DNA. So, is Colby this empathetic, great father he appears to be? I hope so. But a lot of people also, I've seen them also, they believe Colby, and that belief and trust in Colby leads them in a certain direction with this case. And you'll hear me when I cover this case, I kind of flip back and forth, and that's because, we just don't know. I know one thing, I do feel incredibly sorry for Colby. Thanks for sharing. Okay, next is Suzanne Prasey. Hope I said that right. She's addressing the Lori Vallow question, whether or not, she was a good mother. Suzanne says, Lori was never an example mother. If Joseph Ryan had supposedly touched the kid, she would have had him charged. She also left the kids and went missing for a few months as well. So she also addresses the fact, which a lot of people don't even know this, about Lori not getting to the bottom of the problem of Tylee's illness that she has. She says shame on her. And we will cover that too. So Tylee is ill often, and she's in and out of the hospital, which we'll try to cover pretty soon. Thank you, Suzanne, for sharing with us. I enjoyed that. Next we have Lele. I hope I said that right. Love that name. She's referring to Joseph Ryan. I do believe that Joseph was a good father to Tylee, but it may seem that Lori was bored in the relationship and done with Joseph Ryan. So She created her own chaos. But I do feel like something more was going on with him and Colby, like it has been said. I just feel like Lori brought on a lot more drama than necessary. And I want to pause there. That's right, Leila. A lot of people feel that way, that possibly Lori created these situations. Layla continues with, she seems to feed off proving that something is wrong with all the men in her life. She likes to be the victim. She is sick in the head. Definitely, Layla. So it seems that, and I think everybody can agree that no matter which relationship she's in, the one thing I believe most people can agree with is she has to look the victim. Thank you for sharing, Lele. Next, my buddy Ron Hensley. He always says thanks for the post. Thank you, Ron, for being so polite all the time. He said he picked question B. Do you think Lori is an example mother, and why? I believe in the beginning that she was an example mother. Everyone claimed that Lori was a wonderful mom. By appearance, she looked like an everyday mom, possessing integrity and moral scruples, putting the kids first. In my observation, she either snapped or she has a serious undiagnosed mental illness, or possibly brainwashed by Chad. And I want to pause there. That's right, Ron. So a lot of people believe that Chad has everything to do with this. But keep watching, guys, because I believe there's a lot more to her belief system. I think it was already planted there before, and I'll let you guys comment on this later. Before Chad come into the picture, and both Chad and her were brainwashed before meeting, which ended up being the disaster recipe. But yes, everybody, including myself, we thought that Chad was the leader in this. Ron continued with, Lori is culpable in the murders of those beautiful children. So he believes that Lori is responsible and no one is, which I probably didn't say that, but nobody else is responsible for the death of those children other than Lori, which I think that's what he means. If not, you can comment. Which a lot of us do believe that Lori is the sole person responsible for whatever happened to those children, no matter what anybody whispered in her ear. She is responsible as a mother for whatever happens to her children, not Chad, not Julie Rowe, not Jason Mow, not any of these people, not Melanie Gibb. This was an excellent comment, and I appreciate you sharing that, Ron. Very, very well said. And I agree with almost everything. Thank you, Ron. Okay, so up next is Okie Dokie. And so she's wanting to give her 2 cents on whether or not Lori is a good mother, which the majority of people have done. She appeared to be a good mother and person. Many testimonies were given about this. In my opinion, it was facade. She was anything it took to make herself look good. It's tragically sad. She seemed to have a deep need to be recognized, to be special, to be more. So much so that she posed her children, but not as adorable and special themselves, but as a reflection of her special mothering. She kept the kids clean and fed and well dressed. It was always about her. When Tylee started developing her own individualism, becoming an independent teen, Lori's facade started cracking. She had to have the world see this wondrous reflection. Otherwise, that mirror was no longer of use to her. And yeah, that's a good point. So a lot of people do agree with this too. I mean, most people do agree that at some point Lori wasn't a good mother, that she sacrificed her own children for her own desires. And caring for the kids was more about a competition of how good of a mother she was versus how well she'd done the job in her children's eyes. So I agree. Great share. Thank you for sharing. Next, Teresa Dillian Foley. She picked, she did all of them a little bit. I guess it's hard to resist, isn't it, Teresa? So first, she responds about Joe Ryan. I don't think Joe Ryan was a bad father. There is no way to know exactly how good his parenting skills were since he is no longer with us. From what I have read about Lori, I speculate that the children were gaslighted into making claims against Joe Ryan. And then number 2, she is going to comment about Lori. She says Lori appeared to be a good mother for many, but I feel like this was an act. She is all about appearances. Good parents don't use their children to exact vengeance. Sorry guys, I can't talk. Exact vengeance on the spurned spouse. And then 3, yes, I think Julie Rowe has an near-death experience, simply because it's not super rare. But most people don't craft a writing career out of having one, as she and Chad did. Sorry, I sound like I'm butchering your comment, and I don't really do, redos unless it's super bad. So at least she's talking about Julie here. Finally, I got a few people that done this. And so what you'll find is you'll have people who don't believe in afterlife, period. So for those people, Julie's going to look like a super freak. And then you have those people who do believe in an after death or afterlife, and they usually take it to extremes, not to be disrespectful. So to normal people who are sit in the middle, both sides of this is extreme. So, and there are people that sit in the middle and they're like, well, if you prove it to me, then it probably exists. So when it comes to Julie Rowe and Chad, speaking about the afterlife, it's going to be difficult to even talk about, simply because of the outlooks and the belief systems that people have are so diverse these days. And so just to give you an example, I am not big on psychic. I'm not big on ghosts, but I'm absolutely curious about it. So I have an open mind no matter what. So, and I respect what other people believe. My point is, approaching Julie Rowe in this, it's very confusing, I bet, for everybody. Because you don't just have belief systems in here, you have faith systems. And so this actually kind of touches a lot of belief systems in Islam, Judaism, Christians of all types. So the fight here is basically whether, Julie Rowe's telling the truth. Which, even if you have these belief systems, I think most people realize that most likely Julie Rowe's just manipulating. And you'll see why I say that as we move forward. I'm not saying she's an incredibly evil person at all. Would she murder somebody? I don't think she would. But I do believe that most of her, what she shares is that she likes to feel like she's sitting on a throne. And like I said, we'll talk about it as we move forward. The question is, which is also the way Lori was to an extent. If you were to say that Julie Rowe's kids were in her way of her mission, or to get popular or to move forward, how would she handle that? So I think that's where the difference lies between her and Lori. And I want to say thank you so much for sharing, guys. I like sharing these. I'm going to have more questions pop up. So we're going to continue with a series here before we close out. And so we'll begin with around June of 2005. Around this time, Joe is supposed to have Tylee for around 7 days for the summer. But things aren't working out for him and Tylee. His trying to spend time with Tylee is a full-time effort for Joe. It's an emotional ride that has no end, like a satellite caught in the gravity of its planet, falling constantly, but never has a place to land. And for Joe, the chance for a normal life ever again seems impossible. For this one person he met in his life is determined to make his life hell. An eternity of hell, as long as he continues to pursue his existence in their life, meaning Lori and Tylee. Before we move forward in the next videos, there's another person that is involved with this case that you'll hear his name often. His name is Jason Mow. It's still uncertain his role in this case, but we continue to research it. But I'm going to introduce you to him just in case. Jason Mow was raised in Mesa, Arizona. Like Chad, he attended high school and was interested in sports. But after graduating high school, instead of going to college, he says he turns down the scholarship to serve 2 years on his volunteer mission for the Church of Jesus Christ. After his time honorably serving the missionary, Jason returned home and joined the U.S. Army. In books, you'll see that he gives himself, several titles like a paratrooper, but he was mainly just a military police officer. He has a long listed resume that said that he had hand-in-hand combat, sniper background. He's even been a battle instructor. He worked along the side of Joint Federal Counter Narcotics Task Force, and says that he was a personal bodyguard for foreign heads of state and high-ranking military members. And where his story really starts to take place is when he's in the Army and he claims he's in the SRT, so the Special Reaction Team, overseas, mind you. He says that he's with an elite unit tasked with conducting hostage rescue missions and counterterrorism operations. He says in 1998 he left the Army and moved back to Arizona, where he worked as a police officer for the city of Chandler, Arizona. Then later for the Phoenix Police Department, where he was medically retired in 2017. He said he was critically wounded, which you would have thought was being shot or something, but it turned out to be he had ripped several of his hamstrings on his legs. And as we go through this timeline, I'll reintroduce you to Jason Mow and what he's doing during that time period. But for now, I'm just doing an overview. He also claims that he was on the SWAT at one point. In 2006, Jason is recruited by the U.S. State Department to go to Afghanistan. And we had a lot of people that were doing this. I mean, we were in a part where the recession was starting to hit pretty hard and people were hard up for money. He said that he worked for a civilian contractor for the International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Program. He claimed that he was in Afghanistan for 13 months, working with military as a contractor, teaching Afghanistan soldiers how to be police officers and destroying poppy fields, fighting human smuggling, and this is where he acted as a bodyguard for diplomats and government officials. Interestingly, he said he was working with the tribal village elders and regional government officials, helping them to establish constitutional form of government. Now, I'm not going to go into too much more because it goes on and on and on, but Jason Mow is a faithful LDS member, and he hits rock bottom at a point in his life when he was recovering from crippling wounds he sustained as a Phoenix police officer. He had to take off a period of time during his life, and it's during that time that he said that he was inspired to create a book series which he attaches to the LDS, titled Warrior Ethos. It's through these books that he is able to overcome the worst time of his life and all the many hurdles that he had to face, which we may cover in deeper detail later in the timeline. So, anyways, Jason later becomes the owner of Ethos Productions, which is a company that produces faith-promoting experiences through multimedia. And later on, he even has a part to play in a movie that is about children being possessed, where Jason brags that he worked with Hollywood to train and advise actors on how to look, sound, and act like police officers and soldiers. Jason says that he's a professional actor and spokesperson, and he will later start developing these podcasts based off the War Chapters, which is a book series that he creates. One of his favorite characters being Captain Moroni. For my research says that Jason Mow, he really deals with low self-esteem and low worth issues. He also says that he has to overcome learning disabilities, a troubled childhood full of abuse and addictions, a debilitating disease, being critically wounded in the line of duty, and just not a few problems in his personal life, but a tremendous amount of personal tragedies that he had to overcome. He said the power of righteousness, and that with God's help, you can overcome any obstacle and do anything you set your mind to. So why do we mention Jason Mow? Well, this is because he will have an affiliation with Lori and Chad as we get further into the timeline. So I want to kind of introduce him a little bit here. That way when you hear his name pop up throughout the timeline, you know who he is. So before I get started, I do want to say that perhaps he does have real struggles like anybody else. And if they have learning disabilities, it's not easy for them to have that career path that a lot of people are able to choose. So the one thing that he knows is war strategy, and God and his faith attached to the LDS. So it only makes sense that he would try to make money through that. So that you know that I'm not here to just attack people. We are trying to figure out who they are and how they're attached to the case. Most likely Jason Mow was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, meeting the wrong kind of people. Because you're going to see another side, and I'll show it to you. He's quite a romantic type of guy. He absolutely loves his spouses that he's with at the time. He's been married twice that I know of right now. And he likes to go all out for people he cares about. So we'll pick up about 2005, and we'll work our way forward. And it will become more and more interesting each and every time as we get through the introductions and the basic information. Don't forget, guys, we still have these people missing. So we have Jasmine Robinson, Kira Coles, Dulce. While I've been sick, I've not been able to keep up like I usually do, so I'm way behind. I don't even know who is missing any longer. But please remember to share their story, share their video somewhere. You guys are attached to groups all over the place. You can make a difference. I want to say I do appreciate you guys. Thanks for the comments. They were very interesting. I was glad I got a chance to share those. And then I'll see you guys soon on part 2.